Video games are in a unique situation with regards to writing when compared to other mediums, where by inserting the player into the driver's seat, they allow for some truly unique situations that other mediums can't allow for. In my last video, I talked about one form of storytelling that can arise from this, mechanical storytelling. And today I wanted to talk about another storytelling device that is unique to video games, emergent storytelling. Now, what exactly is emergent storytelling? It stems from emergent gameplay, where players are able to effectively create their own gameplay by interacting with gameplay mechanics in unintended or less intended ways, coming up with their own solutions to problems or even their own problems to solve. Emergent narratives are very similar, where players can create their own storylines through their own personal interactions with the game world and its inhabitants. Maybe you got attached to a generic unit in Final Fantasy Tactics or Disgaea, so you come up with a backstory for them and use them constantly. Or maybe you struggled with a certain trainer in Pokemon and couldn't handle his top percentage Rattata, so now you created some beef between you and youngster Joey, and whenever he calls to offer a battle, you drop everything and hoof it over to Route 30 to lay the smackdown on his candy ass. Or maybe you're Annie Austin driving yourself completely insane in Cyberpunk.
You look like you might have been at Totentanz last night. Were you there?
Do I know you?
Oh, maybe you do. Maybe we met each other at Totentanz.
Emergent narratives are a great way to add some replayability or extend a playthrough by giving it a bit of extra personal meaning. They can provide some excellent B-stories, break up a bit of tension, add some story variety, headcanon in some character development, add some extra depth to already existing character development, or add some story to a game that doesn't inherently have one to begin with. Games like Crusader Kings or Civilization are great examples of that last point, where they don't have a set story, but due to the baked-in randomness, every game is going to play out completely differently to where you could easily come up with a unique storyline for every game. Back in my first year of university, let's not talk about how many years ago that was, I remember playing a Civ 5 game with my friends Torben and Kola. Not his real name, but someone saw him moving into res on the first day and he was holding a big pack of Coke, so they decided that was his new nickname. Anyways, at some point, one of us donated some resources or troops to the city-state of Copenhagen, who later proceeded to go wild and completely take over the game by conquering half the world. Now, maybe it was the delirium from the fact that we were playing this game for like 12 or 13 hours straight, but we were determined to see how far Copenhagen would go now that they'd randomly become a superpower, and our own emergent narrative had formed. Sadly, I don't believe we got to finish the game. If my memory serves right, the game crashed and our save glitched out or something, so unfortunately we never got to see Copenhagen go Ultra Instinct, but oh well. I wasn't sure what game I would originally use to talk about emergent narratives. I wanted something I had footage for and could tell a full story, but the challenge is that emergent narratives aren't something that you can necessarily force, or at least I can necessarily force. I thought about diving into Crusader Kings 2, but again, there was no guarantee that I would have felt inspired enough to come up with a personal storyline, or that I would have even liked the game for that matter, which is a bit weird when I've titled the series Games I Love and Want to Talk About. So I thought maybe I'd shelve the idea for a bit until something naturally came up, but thankfully I was playing through something at the time where I did encounter my own natural emergent narrative, Subnautica. Now, Subnautica does have its own story, but for the most part it uses very minimalistic storytelling methods, with the player's curiosity being the main driving force to discovering more about Planet 4546b. And the exposition is very heavily backloaded, leaving lots of room in the early and mid-game for you to create your own adventure and hatch up some stories of your own. The game has you dealing with the horrors of the deep, and for a significant part of the game, I was too terrified to explore very far from the safety of my starting base. The Aurora was uncomfortably large, hello megalophobia, and all other directions were uncomfortably empty, so being above water wasn't calming at all. But underwater was also panic-inducing. Limited oxygen, getting lost in cave systems, aggressive fish, and that. I first saw a Reaper by the mountain island a few hours in, after getting lost looking for LifePod 6. A little while later, I found LifePod 4 and its data log had me too anxious to be anywhere near the Aurora, above water, or under it. And...
Detecting multiple Leviathan-class life forms in the region. Are you certain whatever you're doing is worth it?
The fuck you mean by that? Oh. And off topic, but I thought that maybe if I could keep track of him with the scanner, it might help to quell my anxiety. It, did not do that. Knowledge can be a curse. Sometimes we're better off not knowing exactly how close to us death is lurking on a regular basis. So I felt uncomfortable above water. I felt uncomfortable underwater. Where didn't I feel uncomfortable? Inside. So when I made substantial journeys anywhere, I'd take materials with me for a scanner room, fabricator, and hatch with me to help make the ocean feel a little bit cozier, smaller, and less daunting. By the end of the game, I had set up 6 or 7 bases. That's not a 6-7 joke. These 2 scanner rooms were just very close to each other, so you might argue they're effectively the same base. Most were pretty simple: a scanner to see nearby resources, a fabricator, some lockers, and a power source, with only my late game deep underwater bases having much more than that. Now, this is just me describing my early playthrough of Subnautica. None of this is emergent storytelling yet, but I just wanted to establish the fact that the game had succeeded in making me deeply uncomfortable in this world. So, as one does while playing this game, eventually I discovered the Lost River. And I didn't want to shuttle everything in and out of there constantly, so I decided that this would be a good place for a new base. I found a nice thermal vent, put together a scanner room, and... what is that? It turns out that when I entered the Lost River, I had somehow missed seeing this gigantic... friend roaming the cavern just before my base, and it was a little bit bigger than a Reaper. Oh no. But thankfully my base was just outside of his normal range, so I was able to exist in here without actively freaking out, which gave me an opportunity to actually watch and observe this Leviathan. Now, it probably helped that ghosts are much less creepy looking than Reapers, and this one was in a large, well-lit cavern with perfect visibility, as opposed to the open, frequently dark ocean where anything could be lurking just out of sight. There was stuff lurking just out of sight. It was a lot more fucking Reapers. But without being terrified for my life, I was able to appreciate the design of the ghost leviathans and how pretty they looked. And so I built a viewing platform. Although every single time I left the Lost River, I made a note to bring back some enameled glass or stalker teeth to make an observation room, and every single time I forgot to do that, so this glass tunnel with a window will have to do. And I just got comfortable around this Leviathan. Sure, I knew it was deadly in theory, but there was something oddly calming about watching him. And eventually, every time I went into or out of this base, I'd do a check to see where he was, or just sit in my prawn suit or viewing platform and just watch him for a minute or two randomly. So naturally, it only felt appropriate to name him. And I settled on Daryl. I have absolutely no idea where that name came from, but it was just the first name that came into my mind, and thus he became Daryl. I now had a pet, so I had to scan him and make sure he was clean and everything, and learn a bit more about him. And while I was doing that, he gave me a nice little kiss. I think he's accepted me. Eventually, I'd go on to make one more base down in the fires of hell, and it was a cool enough base. Once again, I didn't use most of this multi-purpose room, but I still made it just in case I ended up needing a whole bunch of space. Okay, I may have a bit of a problem with overestimating what I really need. Objectively, it had a bit more stuff in it, it was much easier to power since I could place a thermal plant literally anywhere, but it didn't have Daryl. It occasionally had Cthulhu at home, but he was a lot angrier, not as cute, and not regularly viewable from my base, so felt like something was missing. So I would still make some trips back up to the Lost River to check in on my boy. And one time after loading the game up, my scanner didn't show the ghost Leviathan nearby, and I damn near had a heart attack. But thankfully he was still there. The edge of his patrol radius must have just been ever so slightly past my scanner radius. And after curing myself of the Kara, shutting down the quarantine enforcement platform, and building the Neptune to set me free from this thalassophobic nightmare, I started flipping the switches and getting ready to launch when I see one of the things on the pre-launch checklist is to create a time capsule. And it was an absolute no-brainer what I wanted to leave in mine. There were so many breathtaking moments in this game, seeing a Reaper lurking in the depths for the first time, realizing how comfortable the seafloor truly was when swimming around the mushroom forest at night. But the most impactful part of my playthrough was Daryl, this random ghost Leviathan juvenile who happened to live mostly peacefully right next to my base, but I didn't have a screenshot of him, so I got back in my prawn suit, hoofed it across half the ocean back to the Lost River, lured him over to my base so I could get a good screenshot of him in the base, and left a message that may or may not eventually make it into someone's hands. I don't actually know if they're still accepting new time capsules anymore. The game came out a little while ago. And to give some perspective for how impactful this random ghost Leviathan was for my playthrough, let's revisit something I said earlier. Most were pretty simple: a scanner to see nearby resources, a fabricator, some lockers, and a power source. I don't usually care to personalize my bases very much. I didn't put up any posters, didn't make any Markiplier dolls, no beds, desks, whatever. Everything was very much practical. My shallower bases were basically scanner, fabricator, lockers, and power source. This one base in the mushroom forest somehow ended up with a second floor solely for the bioreactor, but I only ever actually went there to drop off more fish. My deeper bases were a bit more established to ensure that I didn't have to keep making trips in and out of the Lost River, as climbing out of the Blood Kelp Trench was quite a journey, especially with warpers everywhere. So I added in a moon pool to charge the prawn suit, a multi-purpose room to effectively hold a water distillation plant and some plant beds. Really excellent use of space here. It was all function over form. I didn't care to make something that looks well lived in. I cared about what I needed to cut down the tedium and let me easily do my exploring, and then left it at that. Although, as I said earlier, I really poorly estimated how much space I really needed. I guess I have a lot of room for, I don't know, yoga or something? But somehow this random ghost Leviathan that I adopted had me building the one personal touch that I made this entire playthrough. This one glass tube with the windows so I could look out into the cavern and observe him dancing around. And I'm not alone in anthropomorphizing the terrors of the deep in Subnautica. Sammy the Safety Reaper is a well-known nickname within the Subnautica community for the Reaper just off the port side bow of the Aurora. Someone replied to a Reddit thread that was a picture of a Reaper and joked that he was just trying to make sure that you were following Altera Corporation's mandatory safety regulations while operating a seamouth, and it stuck. From that point on, Sammy was no longer some random terror of the deep. Or, honestly, not so deep, he's pretty close to the surface. He was just ensuring that you were staying safe by showing you the consequences of what might happen if you weren't following protocol. Hell, because people loved Sammy, someone on Reddit made a thread to name all of the other Leviathans. It turns out Daryl is actually Casper. Oh well. In my world, he was Daryl. Although I guess 2 Reaper spawns weren't known about back then. To be fair, there are a lot of them. You bastard. And the great thing about emergent narratives is that they can arise in almost literally any game that gives even a modicum of player freedom. My favorite example of this is from Demolition D's playthrough of Akiba's Trip, where the only freedom he needed was the ability to name his character.
And my name is John Cena!
As far as I'm concerned, that's just what happened in his playthrough. His character just simply introduced himself by shouting his name like that. Similarly, I know a lot of us renamed Red 13 to Nanaki on subsequent FF7 playthroughs just to see this comedic line. That's also emergent storytelling. All you really need for an emergent narrative is to be able to get into one single situation that the developer didn't hardcode into the game. And if you feel creative enough or get hit with a random gust of inspiration, then you can come up with your own B-story in the form of emergent storytelling. Hell, if you really felt inspired enough, I'm sure you could even get some emergent storytelling into something that gives no true player freedom, like, I don't know, Fate Stay Night. Actually, given how that remaster launched in English, maybe that's not the best example.